The skies above Concordia shimmered with a faint lattice of light, the first completed strand of the cosmic beacon network, casting its protective pulse over the planet. From orbit, the world looked pristine and new, a jewel born from the collaboration of 100 species, its atmosphere engineered, its seas drawn from comet ice, its cities rising like living monuments to the promise of unity. But beneath the shining spires of the capital, in the echoing halls of the Galactic Concord Assembly, the air was heavy with suspicion. Admiral Sarah Chun stood before a vast viewport that overlooked Concordia's twin suns, her reflection sharp against the glass. Once she had worn her uniform as armor, a commander forged in battle, every gesture measured in efficiency. Now, dressed in ceremonial white robes traced with golden threads, she felt the weight of something greater expectation. She was no longer simply a strategist of fleets. She was the figurehead of a fragile alliance, the human face of a new order that could collapse under its own contradictions. Her advisors whispered constantly of threats, the void, the empire, the opportunists, who waited on the galactic rim. But it was not only external dangers that haunted her. The Concord itself was fracturing. She had seen it in the eyes of delegates, in the guarded tones of speeches meant to inspire cooperation, but laced with bareness. Behind her, the chamber. Doors hissed open, and Dr. Zix entered, his insectoid frame moving with a stiffness that betrayed inner turmoil. The Sen archaeologist had not been the same since the obelisk had seized his mind months ago. His multifaceted eyes no longer shone with the same clarity. They flickered with strange patterns, like a reflection of distant stars. At times, he spoke in half-sentences, as though part of his thoughts belonged to another voice. "You called for me," Zix said, his voice rasping as though weighed down by unseen gravity. Chun turned, studying him with the sharp focus of a soldier. "They're questioning us, Zix." Whispers spread through every delegation. "They believe we're hiding something, knowledge of the precursors, technology that we keep to ourselves. I need to know if there's truth to it." The scientist hesitated, his tendrils curling in agitation. He remembered flashes that weren't his own. Towering figures of light, the taste of alien air, visions of galaxies collapsing under shadow. When he had touched the obelisk, he had felt eternity crash against his mind like a tidal wave. And in that deluge, he had seen fragments of human design secrets too vast, too dangerous to reveal. "There are truths even I cannot hold," he murmured, his gaze drifting past her to the glow of the beacon beyond the window. "The obelisks are more than we believed. They are not only keys to the past, but to futures that branch like roots in soil. If humanity carries more knowledge than the others suspect, it is because the knowledge itself has chosen you." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer." Before Zix could reply, the chamber's comnet crackled with an urgent broadcast. The voice of the High Counselor filled the air, taut with unease. "Esteemed delegates, intelligence reports confirm a troubling development. Several Concord members have accused the human delegation of concealing precursor archives. These rumors claim humans have the ability to activate relics beyond any other species, and that they are withholding the method for themselves. Already, fleets in the outer sectors refuse to answer the Council's summons." The words echoed in the chamber, each syllable a fracture spreading through fragile unity. Chun felt a chill pass through her. She had anticipated skepticism, but this was something sharper, more dangerous. The birth of paranoia. If left unchecked, it would rot the Concord from within. She could command fleets against the void. She could marshal strategies against the Empire. But how did one fight whispers? In the hearts of allies? Dr. Zix staggered slightly, his tendrils quivering, his compound eyes flashing with a pattern she did not recognize. His voice came low, almost alien in tone. "They are not wrong, Admiral. There is more buried within humanity's blood than even you realize." And soon, the galaxy will see it for themselves. Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer, searching his shifting gaze. What do you mean, Zix? What have you seen? But his words dissolved into silence, leaving only the hum of the beacon and the spreading shadow of doubt. For the first time since Nebula X9, Sarah Chun felt not the weight of victory, but the tremor of something unraveling. The unity she had bled for, the trust forged in the fire of survival, was slipping through her grasp. And somewhere in the distance, like a storm gathering beyond the stars, she sensed the first stirrings of fear, not from the void, not from the Empire, but from within the very alliance she had sworn to protect. The Exoralid homeworld burned with a crimson hue, its jagged mountains glowing under the relentless light of a swollen red giant. Cities sprawled across the landscape in angular precision, towering spires of obsidian and steel piercing the smog-choked sky. In orbit above, fleets of warships drifted in disciplined formation, their hulls etched with patterns of scales and flame symbols of an empire that had endured for millennia through conquest and fear. Within the heart of the imperial citadel, Grand Marshal Caesar stood before a vast chamber of flame-lit stone. His scaled body gleamed like living bronze, every movement a testament to the strength of his people. Around him, the council of Exoralid warlords muttered among themselves, their voices low rumbles echoing across the hall. The Concord is a sham, one of them growled, his scales flashing a warning red. A human empire in disguise. They speak of unity, but in truth they prepare to rule us all. Caesar raised one clawed hand, silencing the chamber. His voice carried with a resonance that seemed to vibrate the very stone. We have allowed the humans to deceive the weak, but we see them for what they are. They call themselves guardians, but their fleets are precursors reborn, their artifacts responding only to their touch. Does this not strike you as curious? Convenient? The warlords hissed their agreement. For the Exoralid, trust was an illusion, power the only constant. And humanity's sudden rise, their claim to an ancient legacy, smelled to them not of destiny, but of conspiracy. They wield fear, Caesar continued, his tail lashing behind him, and the lesser races tremble. But we are not lesser. We are not children waiting to be shepherded. We are the Empire. And if humanity wishes to stand as gods, then we shall remind them that gods too can bleed. The chamber erupted with thunderous roars, fists slamming against armored chests. In agreement, but Caesar was not finished. With a gesture, he summoned a holographic display that shimmered to life in the air above them. It showed a relic vast, obsidian, and silent buried deep beneath the surface of Exoralid Prime. The warlords fell into hushed silence. This, Caesar said, his voice lowering to a dangerous growl, is the Obsidian Gate, older than our empire, older even than our myths. For centuries, it has resisted all attempts to awaken it. But now, with what we have learned from the humans' arrogance, we have found a way to bend it to our will. The warlords hissed, some with fear, others with hunger. To tamper with precursor relics was forbidden, even by the Concord. But the Empire had never bowed to laws written by others. Caesar's eyes glowed with a malevolent fire as he revealed the final piece of his plan. We have captured fragments of human genetic material from the battlefield. Their blood is the key. With it, we will open the gate. And when we do, we will command not the echoes of the past, but weapons older and more terrible than the humans themselves. The chamber vibrated with the force of his proclamation. War drums thundered in distant halls, echoing through the citadel. For the first time since Nebula X9, the Exoralid Empire would march, and their enemy would not be the Void, but humanity itself. As the warlords dispersed, preparing their fleets, Caesar remained alone with the hologram of the Obsidian Gate. His claws traced the faint outlines of its surface, his mind burning with visions of conquest. Humanity thought themselves gods, but he would prove them mistaken. For in the depths of the gate, in whispers older than stars, he had heard another voice, dark, seductive, promising him victory if only he embraced its power. And though he told no one, deep within the shadows of his heart, even Caesar wondered, was it the voice of his ancestors? Or something far older and far more dangerous? The border world of Trivara was a fragile, jewel-lush green continent wrapped around a sapphire sea, its skies dotted with orbital stations built in haste after the formation of the Concorde. It was meant to symbolize unity, a shared colony, where multiple species worked side by side. Instead, it had become the crucible of suspicion. Admiral Sarah Chun arrived aboard humanity's Hope. Her presence meant to reassure the nervous governors. From orbit, she could see the jagged scar of a recent skirmish across one of the orbital stations, its metal twisted like paper, venting a slow stream of debris into the void. A battle had been brief but devastating. A Concorde patrol destroyed by ships bearing HFY markings, yet rumors claimed the attackers were defectors from within the Concorde itself. In the governor's chamber, the air was thick with accusation. Representatives of 3 worlds bickered, their translators layering harsh tones into cacophony. "You humans said we would be protected," hissed the Thorian, his gelatinous form quivering with outrage. "And yet Concorde fleets vanish, our borders burn. You tell us the void is the enemy, but your hands control the artifacts. Perhaps it is you we should fear." Chun held her composure, though her pulse hammered. She had been trained to command starships, not to soothe frightened allies who saw ghosts in every shadow. "The void is real," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the din. "You fought beside us at Nebula X9. You saw it. If defectors have joined the Empire, that is not proof of betrayal by humanity, but of the danger we all face when fear takes root." Her words landed with some effect. Murmurs softened, but suspicion remained. In the corner of the chamber stood Zaral of the Silicon Collective, his crystalline body glowing faintly in shades of calm blue. Once humanity's fiercest critic, he had become their defender after his soul was laid bare in the cosmic orbit. He stepped forward now, his voice resonant. "I stood against them once," he admitted, his facets flickering. "I called them deceivers. I was wrong. The humans do not seek domination. They carry a burden none of us would envy. I have seen it. If there is fear in your hearts, it should not be of them, but of the darkness that comes." For a moment, silence reigned. But then, as if summoned by the tension, a sharp crackle of static filled the chamber. The emergency connet lit up with a fleet-wide broadcast. Chun snapped her head toward the display as the image resolved into a trembling governor from another border system. Behind him, flames roared through shattered glass walls, ships streaking across the skies in pitched battle. "They're here," he cried. "HFY ships, but they are ours too. Concorde vessels fight alongside them. His transmission cut off in a burst of static. Gasps rippled through the assembly. The accusation Chun had feared most was suddenly no longer rumor, it was reality. Concorde ships had turned on their own, defectors openly joining the Empire's cause. Dr. Zix, who had remained silent until now, staggered forward, his multifaceted eyes flickering in unnatural patterns. "It spreads," he whispered, his voice carrying a resonance not wholly his own. "Not just fear, something deeper, a seed, an influence. The void reaches through them, ending loyalties, twisting bonds. The Empire is not merely acting of its own will." Chun felt a chill grip her spine as she looked out the viewport at the fractured skies of Trivara. She had come to defend unity, but already it was slipping through her hands. And now, the unthinkable had come to pass. Brother fought brother. ally turned traitor. She realized with brutal clarity that the next battle would not be fought only against the Empire, nor the Void, but within the very soul of the Concorde itself. The shuttle cut through the emptiness beyond the galactic rim, its hull shuddering as it passed into a region of space no navigational chart dared to name. Here, the stars were fewer, their light smothered by clouds of ancient dust that glowed faintly in hues of violet and green. Dr. Zix sat strapped into his seat, his insectoid frame trembling, not from turbulence, but from the knowing certainty that what he was about to uncover would change everything dash again dot across from him. Admiral Sarah Chun studied him with sharp eyes. She had insisted on accompanying him, despite protests from her staff. She could not shake the feeling that this expedition, born from fragments of vision still haunting Zix's mind, would define not only their alliance, but the galaxy's future. "You're certain?" she asked quietly, her voice low enough that the crew would not hear. "There's something out here?" Zix's compound eyes flickered, strange starlight rippling across them like a reflection. "Not something," he said, his voice carrying a resonance beyond his own. "Someone. The memory of an age before even the precursors called themselves such. The obsidian revelation waits, buried and patient." The shuttle descended into the atmosphere of a barren world. Its surface stretched in endless deserts of black glass, dunes frozen mid-wave as if fire had swept across them, and then vanished in an instant. Scattered across the wasteland rose monoliths of obsidian, jagged and half-buried, the remains of structures too immense to comprehend. They looked less like ruins and more like bones of the cosmos itself, left behind after some forgotten cataclysm. Teams set up scanners, but the instruments faltered, overwhelmed by the electromagnetic interference pulsing beneath the crust. Zix ignored them. Guided by visions he barely understood, he led them into a canyon carved into the glassy earth. At its base, buried beneath layers of crystallized ash, they found it, a sealed chamber, its surface inscribed with the unmistakable double helix of human DNA, entwined with alien symbols. Chun felt her heart tighten. "Another human site," she murmured. "But how far back does this one go?" Zix extended a trembling hand, his claws tracing the patterns. As he touched the surface, the symbols ignited, casting the canyon in waves of pale light. The air hummed with power. The chamber wall dissolved into transparency, revealing a vast interior. Murals carved in luminous crystal, depicting wars fought among the stars long before recorded history. Chun stepped closer, her breath caught. The murals showed humans, not as fragile upstarts, not even as guardians, but as conquerors. Armies of human forms, wielding radiant weapons, stood against monstrous shadows, yes, but also against alien figures that looked all too familiar. Among them were unmistakable depictions of the Exraelis ancestors, locked in brutal war with humanity's forebears. "This," Chun whispered, "this can't be true." Zix's voice shook as he translated the glyphs inscribed beneath the murals. The War of Origin. Humanity did not simply guide life. They waged war upon those who resisted their will. The Exraelid were not always enemies. They were rivals, equals once until humanity struck fear into them, long before the Concorde was even dreamed of. The chamber trembled, a low rumble reverberating through the glass world. A holographic projection bloomed to life, filling the space with a colossal figure of light. Its features were human, but impossibly ancient, its eyes glowing like dying suns. Its voice thundered, not from speakers, but from the very atoms of the air. "We are the architects," it declared. "We shape the paths of stars, the seed of life, the bonds of destiny. Yet we were betrayed, not by shadow, but by pride. Our children turned upon us, and so the cycle was born. Guardians become conquerors, conquerors become ashes. Remember and beware." The hologram dissolved, leaving silence so profound it pressed on their chests. Chun stood motionless, her mind reeling. The Concord had believed humans to be elder siblings, precursors who guided life. But here was a truth far darker. Humanity had once been warlords, feared as gods of destruction. The Exorila's hatred was not paranoia, it was memory. Zix sank to his knees, his tendrils twitching uncontrollably. I saw it in visions, but I did not wish to believe. Humanity is not only guardian, they are destroyer. They are the crucible itself. Chun looked down at him, her face caught between horror and grim resolve. She thought of the whispers already spreading across Concordia, of the defectors, of the fleets choosing sides. If this revelation became known, it could shatter the fragile alliance forever, but the truth could not be buried forever. Already, cracks spread across the chamber walls, light bleeding through as if the world itself sought to speak. Sarah-Chun clenched her fists, knowing the weight of what she must carry. Not just the burden of command, but the burden of a past so terrible that it might doom the very unity she fought to preserve. And somewhere beyond the rim, in the depths of the Empire, Grand Marshal Caesar studied his own relic, awakening the Obsidian Gate. Perhaps he already knew what Chun had just learned, that humanity's rise was not only destiny, but the resurrection of a nightmare the galaxy thought. Buried, the Exoralid warfleet gathered above Tartarus IV like a storm of iron and flame. Dreadnoughts, the size of cities, formed the backbone of the formation, their armored hulls bristling with weapon systems refined over millennia of conquest. Between them darted swarms of crimson fighters, sleek and predatory, moving in tight, disciplined formations. At the heart of the armada floated a single colossus, the vessel known as the Blood Crown, seat of Grand Marshal Caesar. Caesar stood on the command dais, his scaled form gleaming under the blood-red light of the tactical displays. Before him, the hologram of the Obsidian Gate shimmered, its angular geometry impossibly alien, its surface seething with faint light. In his claws, he held a shard of human blood-encoded crystal, stolen from a battlefield corpse. His war priests chanted around him, their voices guttural and resonant, channeling the shard into the gate's projection. The gate responded, its dark surface rippled like liquid, threads of light racing across its black mass. Systems across the fleet surged with energy far beyond anything Exoralid technology had ever produced. Engines screamed to life, weapons arrays hummed, and shields flared in iridescent brilliance. The war priests bowed low, trembling at the raw surge of power. "Behold," Caesar growled, his voice resonant with triumph. "The humans claim they are chosen, but their own blood bends to our will. The gate will be our weapon, not theirs." With a clawed gesture, he commanded the fleet forward. There, target, Concordia, the very heart of the fragile Galactic Concord. Across light years, alarms flared through the defense grid. Admiral Sarah-Chun stood on the bridge of humanity's hope, the nerve center of the Concord fleet. Reports streamed in, fleets massing, order worlds falling silent, stations overwhelmed. But the worst came last. Concordia itself, her exozoric rumbled, his mandibles clacking in grim dread. "The Empire is coming here." The words carried the weight of doom. Concordia was more than a world. It was the living symbol of unity, the place where fragile trust between species was being painstakingly forged. If it fell, the Concord would fracture beyond repair. Chun's voice cut through the rising panic with iron calm. "Signal all fleets. Prepare full defensive formation. We hold this world, or the Concord dies with it." The great spires of Concordia gleamed in the light of its twin suns as fleets scrambled into orbit, ships of 100 species arraying beside human vessels. For a moment, it looked like the promise of Nebula X9 reborn. unity against a common foe. Yet beneath the surface, Chun sensed hesitation. Old suspicions lingered, and whispers of humanity's withheld secrets still poisoned trust. Then the Empire arrived. The sky tore open as the blood crown emerged from hyperspace, its vast silhouette blotting out the stars. Behind it, wave after wave of crimson warships poured forth, their engines burning like a sea of fire. The obsidian gate's power rippled through them, shields flared brighter. Weapons crackled with unnatural energy, and sensors across the Concorde fleet went blind. The bridge of humanity's hope, consoles sparked violently. "Our system's interference," cried a technician. "The gate? It's disabling our precursor cores." Chun's gut twisted. The Hope was humanity's greatest vessel, a fusion of precursor technology and galactic innovation. But against the obsidian gate, its heart faltered. Screens flickered, weapons sputtered, and the ship shuddered as though gripped by an unseen hand. Scizor's voice boomed across all frequencies, a triumphant roar laced with venom. "People of the Concorde, behold the weakness of your so-called guardians. Their blood is ours to command. Their relics bow to our will. Humanity is no savior, only a tyrant, toppled before it could reign." The Concorde fleets wavered. Some ships broke formation, scattering in panic. Others turned their weapons not toward the Empire, but suspiciously toward their human allies. Chun stood rigid, her hands braced against the railing, her mind racing. She had faced the void and stared into its abyss. But this was worse. This was the collapse of trust, the unraveling of everything they had built. "Admiral," Zorak cried. "Orders?" Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "All ships, hold the line. Protect Concordia at all costs. Humanity's hope will stand as long as it takes." The ship shuddered again, precursor cores dimming, systems buckling. Sparks lit the bridge as alarms wailed. For the first time, Chun felt the terrible weight of vulnerability. Humanity had been revealed as precursors, as guardians, but in this moment, with their greatest ship failing and allies faltering, she wondered if they were about to be remembered instead as false gods, brought low by their own secrets. And deep within his command chamber, Scizor smiled, his scales shimmering in triumph. The gate had answered. The humans bled. And soon the galaxy would fear the Empire once more. The halls of Concordia's inner archives trembled as the sounds of battle thundered above. Explosions rippled faintly through the foundations, and every so often the faint hum of the precursor. Beacons faltered, like a heartbeat skipping. Admiral Sarah Chun descended into the subterranean chambers with Dr. Zix at her side, her ceremonial white robes torn and scorched from the failing defense of humanity's hope. The air here was heavy, thick with the weight of millennia. Holograms shimmered faintly along the stone-like walls, images that seemed to flicker between record and vision, memory and prophecy. Ura Nakamura was waiting. The emissary stood in the center of a great circular chamber, his white robe untouched. By the chaos above, his dark eyes glowing faintly, as if reflecting a light that came from no source in the room. Chun had fought beside him, had trusted him, but the serenity on his face now unnerved her more than the Empire's fleet. "You knew," Chun said, her voice sharp, carrying the steel of a commander who had lost too many under her watch. "You've always known more than you told us." Ura inclined his head, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than denial. "Pieces," he said softly. "Echoes. The fragments I carried were not my own. I am not merely human, Sarah. I am an extension, a living vessel of the Precursor's memory. I have been awakening as you have. And now the time has come for you to see the whole." Dr. Zix staggered forward, his multifaceted eyes flickering with strange constellations. His tendrils twitched in erratic patterns, as though he were both present and elsewhere. I have seen it too, he whispered, in the visions of the obelisk. A truth I could not hold, a truth I feared. Ura extended his hand toward the central plinth. At his touch, the chamber flared with sudden light. The walls dissolved into a sweeping vision of the galaxy, stars spiraling outward in luminous chains. Images unfolded in vast, layered murals of light and sound. Humans, taller and fiercer than the ones who now stood in the chamber, wielding radiant weapons and guiding evolution across countless worlds. But the vision shifted, those same humans now as destroyers, unleashing storms of fire on alien civilizations that resisted their designs. Chun's breath caught as she saw figures that bore unmistakable resemblance to the Exoride ancestors, slaughtered in battle against humanity's forebears. The murals were not myths. They were records, history written in blood and fire. They were guardians, Ura said, his voice resonant, carrying more than his own timbre now layered ancient, a chorus speaking through him. But also destroyers. They seeded life, yes, but they also crushed it when it strayed too far from their design. Humanity was their masterpiece, their weapon, and their heir. You are both protector and executioner by design. Chun shook her head, anger and grief warring in her chest. No, that cannot be who we are. We chose peace. We built the Concord. To end domination, not begin it again. Zix's claws scraped against the plinth, his body trembling. Admiral, the Empire's hatred is not without cause. They remember, even if only in myth, the wars of origin. To them, the humans are not saviors. You are the gods who once tried to unmake them. Above, another explosion shook the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. The walls of light shifted again, showing not only the past, but what could come. Visions of humanity standing at the head of galactic fleets, entire civilizations kneeling or burning. Chun saw herself among those visions, her hands guiding fleets like puppets, her voice commanding the beacons as if they were extensions of her own will, her throat closed. If this is true, then what choice do we have? If we reveal this, the Concord will shatter. If we hide it, we become the very tyrants they fear. Ira stepped closer, his eyes blazing now with the full fire of his revelation. Choice, Sarah. That is the one thing the precursors could not engineer. They built humanity to be the crucible, but it is you now who decide whether that legacy becomes salvation or ruin. You may wield the destroyer's fire, but you may also choose not to. The galaxy must see not what you are made to be, but what you choose to become. Zix collapsed to his knees, clutching his head as fragments of vision seared through his. Mind, the void, he croaked. It is no stranger. It is the shadow of the precursor's own failures, feeding on the cycles of domination and collapse. Every time the Guardians became tyrants, every time they burned worlds to ash, the void grew stronger. It is their consequence. Perhaps it is ours. The chamber went silent, but for the distant rumble of war. Chun looked from Zix to Ura, then up at the swirling images of destiny dancing across the walls. Her hands clenched into fists, the weight of command heavier than ever. Humanity was not just the elder sibling, not merely guardian. They were also destroyer, the sword hidden in the dark. For the first time since Nebula X9, Sarah Chun felt fear not of defeat, not of the void, but of the terrible possibility that the galaxy was right to fear humanity. And yet, as the chamber dimmed and the visions faded, she raised her head. Then we decide, here, now, if humanity was built as a weapon, then it will be our choice whether that weapon becomes a shield or a blade. But deep within the archives, where even Ura's light could not reach, something stirred. A presence older than even the murals, whispering from the ruins of forgotten wars. The shadows shifted, coalescing, and for an instant Zix swore he saw a pair of eyes staring back at him, vast, hungry, patient. The truth had been revealed. But truth alone would not save them. The Assembly Hall of Concordia was a cathedral of light, built to awe, to inspire trust. Its vaulted ceilings shimmered with energy drawn from the beacons, and 1,000 seats encircled the central dais where speakers stood, bathed in holographic brilliance. On this day, however, all had curdled into fear. The chamber thundered with arguments, clicks, hisses, and roars in 100 tongues. Grand Marshal Caesar's voice boomed across the hall, his scaled body towering in projection from the blood crown in orbit. His crimson eyes gleamed with triumph as his words lashed like whips. You see it for yourselves. The humans are. No guardians, no siblings. They are conquerors, tyrants reborn. Their blood commands the obelisks. Their fleets bend the beacons. Even now, their ship falters because it is bound to their arrogance. Fear them, or they will be your masters. Delegates muttered and shouted, suspicion thick in the air. Some species shrank in terror. Others clenched fists or raised spines. In rage, already a handful of Concord ships had defected to the Empire after the assault on Concordia. Chun could feel the moment slipping away, unity collapsing like glass under pressure. She stood at the dais, her figure small compared to the holographic giant of Caesar. Yet when she spoke, her voice cut through the uproar with a force no amplifier could explain. Yes, fear us. The chamber went still. Even Caesar's sneer faltered. Chun's eyes blazed, her voice resonant, every word carried by the beacons. Themselves. Fear us, because you are right. Humanity was made as more than guardians. We carry the legacy of destroyers. The murals do not lie. Your ancestors fought ours, and they bled beneath our fire. We are the crucible. We are the test. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Zarl of the Silicon Collective lowered his crystalline head, torn between horror and belief. Dr. Zix, trembling at the edge of the dais, whispered to himself, "She speaks the truth?" And yet, Chun raised her hand, and the beacons answered. The chamber walls dissolved into starlight, the entire galaxy projected around them. Fleets shimmered like motes of light, each one pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her words thundered, amplified not by technology, but by the living resonance of the precursor network. But fear does not make us your masters. Fear does not dictate destiny. We do not stand here as gods or as conquerors. We stand as choice. We have the power to lead, to burn, to dominate. But we choose instead to shield, to stand with you against the void that will devour us all. If we stand divided, the galaxy map flickered. In its vast spiral arms, a shadow spread, a roiling blackness devouring the light. The void's corruption, closer now, tendrils stretching like claws toward inhabited systems. The delegates recoiled, their voices falling silent as the scale of the threat eclipsed all petty arguments. Caesar roared in fury. Lies! Illusions! They use their relics to terrify you. Humans speak of unity, but hold the sword at your throat. But then something shifted. A wave of darkness rippled through the projection, and the eyes of the void opened, vast and burning, fixed upon the chamber as if it saw them through time and space. Delegates shrieked, some collapsing in terror. And suddenly the truth broke open. The corruption that had festered within the Exoralid Empire, the whispers that had twisted Caesar as ambition, were revealed for all to see. The void had been inside them all along. Caesar faltered, his voice breaking, his scales flickering between rage and fear. The holographic giant wavered, and for the first time, the warlord looked small. No, this is impossible. Chun stepped forward, her presence blazing with the power of the network, her gaze locked on the assembly. Not impossible. Inescapable. The void has fed on our hatred, our cycles of fear and conquest for eons. It is not only outside us, it is within us, and that is why we must stand together. Not for humanity, not for empire, for all life. She raised her hand once more. The beacon surged. Above Concordia, fleets flickered into alignment, not because of orders, but because the beacons resonated with every ship, every pilot, every commander willing to fight. Across the chamber, delegates who moments ago shouted in suspicion now stared with wide eyes, their hearts torn between terror and awe. Dr. Zix whispered hoarsely, "She has become the fulcrum. Humanity is the blade, but she is deciding how it will fall." The hall erupted not in chaos, but in thunderous affirmation. Some delegates raised their limbs, tentacles, wings, mandibles in pledge. Others still hesitated, their fear not fully banished. But the balance had shifted. Humanity had struck fear into them. Yes, but in that fear, they saw also the path to survival. Chun's final words echoed through the hall, through the fleets, through the very beacons themselves. "Fear us if you must, but know this our power is yours as much as ours. Stand with us, or the void will devour us all." Outside, the first tremor of the void's approach rippled against the galactic rim. The true war had not yet begun. But in the assembly, amidst fear and fire, the galaxy had been forced to make its choice.